Hi guys, Rex here, and welcome to my advanced guide for the hunting bow. I already have a bow guide out on YouTube, so if you haven't already watched that one, I recommend that you go and watch that first. I'll leave a link in the description. This video will cover the more advanced aspects of the bow, as well as different special ammo types that I mentioned in my previous video. After watching this video, you should know about the following techniques: advanced movement with the bow, partial draws, drop shots, and flick shots. GG. You should also have knowledge about the utility of the different arrow types and have an idea about how they can be combined with each other or other weapons. Let's get into it. Advanced movement with the bow. In my last video, I pointed out that movement and positioning is key with the bow. When you draw your arrows, your movement is slowed down, which makes you an easy target if you're not careful. Having nearby cover is almost always going to be your best bet. If you watch me play the bow, you probably noticed that I move a lot between shots. The closer your target is, the more important it is to move. The closer target is easier to hit. One of the techniques I use a lot is to make a hard left or right turn immediately after releasing the arrow. The travel time of the arrow combined with how quickly I do this often results in hearing the player die after they're out of my vision. The reason for doing this is to move out of the way for incoming shots immediately. The longer I stay still, the more likely the enemy is to land a shot on me. Sometimes this could result in a trade. Other times it could be their teammates landing a shot on me if I'm up against multiple players.
This guy's running back and forth a lot.
Once you release your arrow, get to cover and redraw or reposition if necessary. Partial draws in close combat. The bow is a weapon that differs from every other weapon in the game in that it has a draw mechanic that scales damage. The more you draw your bow, the higher the damage output. The draw damage can be further amplified with the 100 hands trait as covered in my last video, which also increases the draw time slightly in exchange for 10% extra damage at full draw. When it comes to close combat situations, you'll probably find that taking the time to fully draw the bow is tricky, and sometimes impossible to do if the enemy player is right next to you. In some scenarios, drawing the bow only partially before releasing the arrow can be a smart move, as it will apply pressure to the player by damaging them and applying a bleed. Furthermore, you can pull the arrow out if it lands, dealing significant damage. Depending on how much draw you had on the initial shot, the arrow pull will often be enough to kill the enemy player, but if not, landing a second partial draw hit will usually do the trick. This does require you to be very accurate and quick with your shots, however. Another thing that is important to keep in mind is that not every player is going to have max health. As you probably know, the maximum amount of health you can have in Hunt Showdown is 150. If a player has been down even a single time in the match without regaining their health bars from banishing a boss, the chances of getting a one-shot on them with the bow drastically increases. Learning how much you need to draw the bow in different scenarios is something that only comes with practice. Drop shots. In my last video, I talked about the hip-fire accuracy with the bow. Hip firing or firing the weapon without aiming down sights is usually the way to go if you're close to your target. The hip fire accuracy retains even if you're jumping, which I showcased in my last video, but also if you're dropping from heights. If you're a good shot with the bow, this will allow you to take your bow gameplay to the next level. An example would be dropping off a wall and fire the arrow mid-air, or dropping out of a window. This accomplishes a couple of things. You get the arrow off quicker, meaning you can redraw again faster in case you miss or if there are multiple targets. You will likely surprise an unexpected enemy by dropping from an angle that they didn't predict, such as a window. Finally, you will also be a trickier target to hit, as you are falling at full speed. Flick shots. Possibly the most powerful technique both with the bow but also with other weapons. Flick shots take a tremendous amount of practice to master, but will ultimately take your overall aim and accuracy to the next level. Flick shotting means moving your aim point or crosshair from one point to another point at a very fast rate, often with minimal visual aiming involved. What I mean by that is that your shots will often land before your eyes register the location of your crosshair. Flick shotting is highly dependent on muscle memory, which basically means perfecting the movements required to move the crosshair from A to B in any given scenario. This can be a time-consuming thing to master, but is probably the single most useful technique you'll ever acquire in any FPS game. Practice your flick shots by placing a crosshair off target. With the bow, you'll generally want to do this while full draw, as this is how most PvP scenarios will unfold. Move your crosshair as quickly as possible without losing accuracy, and try to aim for center mass in the beginning. Increase the aim speed as your skill increases. As your aim and flick shots improve, you can do the same thing but aim for headshots instead. The special ammo types of the bow. As mentioned in my last video, the bow comes with 3 different special ammo types. I'll now be covering each of them and their utility. Let me once again emphasize that I think normal arrows are the best option for serious bow gameplay. The second best option would be poison arrows if you're on a double bow and or ammo boxes, but this means losing the opportunity to run more useful secondary weapons and consumables, which is not worth it in my opinion. All of the special ammo types come with greatly reduced ammo pools, so just keep that in mind. In any case, here are the special ammo types of the bow. Poison arrows. The poison arrows of the bow are identical to regular arrows in terms of velocity and drop. but additionally apply a poison effect to the target, meaning their hearing and vision will be impaired. As you probably know, poison also prevents you from healing, meaning players who don't run antidote shots will be in big trouble. On top of these effects, the poison arrows will one-shot tankier AI targets such as armors. Concertina Arrows. Concertina Arrows release a cluster of barbed wire on impact. In serious gameplay scenarios, the main utility of this would be the ability to block up entrances, create cover, and prevent pushing or blocking bodies from revives. The Concertina Arrows are heavier than irregular arrows. This makes it trickier to land shots, especially on range. The Concertina Arrows can be used to prevent player movement if you can land accurate shots. This opens up all kinds of hilarious opportunities, such as landing bomb land sticks on range or finishing them off with a frag arrow. The imagination is the limit. You could obviously finish them off with a secondary Concertina arrow or a regular arrow as well. Frag Arrows. This arrow type is probably the trickiest to master. Frag Arrows explode and apply a bleed effect in a small radius. The Frag Arrows are very heavy and will drop a lot compared to the other ammo types. The damage is generally not as high as you'd expect, but I have found them to be fairly useful after having a lot of practice running them. The Frag Arrows will not stick to their targets, which can be used to your advantage in certain scenarios. For instance, I've gotten kills by hitting walls and having the arrows fall down on targets below. If you bring a regular bow and a bow with Frag Arrows, you can use the Frag Arrows to finish off targets that are healing behind cover, as they won't expect you to have an angle on them. The most fun use I've found for the Frag Arrows is to run them with a Concertina bow. Trap your targets with Concertina Arrows and finish them off with Frag Arrows. To conclude this guide, I've decided to include a solo versus trio gameplay scenario where I implemented a lot of the techniques both from this guide and the previous one. I'll first show the clip and I'll talk you through what's going on throughout the fight. Alright, let's watch that one more time. I start off by scanning and realize there are 3 hunters pushing up to the compound. I cook my dynamite bundle and throw it around the corner, which ends up killing 1 hunter. Another quick scan confirms there are still 2 hunters on the left side around the corner. I quickly draw my bow and try to land a hipfire flick shot on one of them. I miss the shot and fall back to cover. The other hunter tries to flank on the right side and I get a hipfire headshot on him. I redraw my bow and fail another attempt to hipfire flick shot the pushing hunter. I fall back to cover and get on the hay bale. I miss the first shot, but the second shot ends up being a partial draw jumping flick shot, followed by an immediate push for the arrow pull, which ultimately kills the hunter. That concludes my advanced bow guide. If you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear it. If you want to learn more, make sure to follow me on Twitch, as I play the bow almost every single stream. Feel free to ask me any questions you might have while I'm live as well. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you would like to see more content of this type, let me know in the comments below. I stream live on Twitch 3 to 5 days per week. If you want to support the channel further, there's a Patreon page, and you can find my schedule in the Discord channel. I'll leave all of my links in the description. Thank you so much for watching.